Yes, it is.
I'm Christine. Um, yeah, I
Thank you.
was I was reading something on the jw.org website. I like to read about religion. Um, and this was
Mhm.
a really interesting article. It's called "Who Really Is the Faithful and Discreet Slave?"
Mhm.
I just had a couple questions about that. I was kind of thinking about the kind of how that where that originated. That thought that that is somebody today, existing today, like it was the thought that seems to be that it was a prophecy.
Mhm.
Is that how you take that as a prophecy? Really,
Yeah.
because they're
Um. Oh. Yeah. When we look at the Bible, we know a lot of it was pertaining to the times at that time when it was written, and then there's also these a lot of references for a time in the future where the fulfillment wasn't in that verse, or there was maybe a minor fulfillment at that time, but it also points to a bigger fulfillment in the future. Um, for instance, we see a lot of Jesus' words when he talks about the last days. And so he's pointing to not only the last days of, you could say, the Jewish system of things where before the destruction of Jerusalem, but he's also pointing to a future last days as well. So it had meaning for the people at that point, but it also that's why we can see the meaning for it for us too in the times that we're living in.
so so Jesus was actually talking about the Watchtower, in the 1800s. That's what he was predicting about.
Well, there's prophecies that point towards God taking out a people that are for His name, which is why we're called Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, and so it would point to a time when people would start, you could say, start paying attention to what the Bible says again, because there was a period of time when people didn't, and they kind of went along whatever they were taught, and there was going to be a time when
Hello?
that cut out.
Oh yeah, you cut out just
Hello?
for a second. I think I caught
Oh,
most of it though. Okay, so that's kind of roundabout, but yes. So you say yes. I was looking into also their history on this interpretation of this, and I was curious who was the original wise servant or faithful slave. I mean, in the organization. Who was it right off from the start?
oh,
Because there wasn't
you
really a
broke up a little
governing
bit there.
body in the beginning.
No, that actually came about um, later, and so at first, I mean, there was a president of the Watchtower Tract Society back then, and let me just share one scripture with you that kind of describes. So in Proverbs 4:18, it talks about the path of the righteous is like the bright morning light that grows brighter and brighter until full daylight. And so the the Bible prophecies that the understanding of these different scriptural things would take time, and that wasn't only with the governing body, but also with many different things that Jehovah's Witnesses did. They realized over time, like, oh, we're not doing this quite right. We need to readjust the way that we're doing things. And it was the same way with the governing body. When we look at the way that the Christian congregation was set up in the first century CE, it was a group group of men. At first, it was the apostles. They took the lead in the organization at that time and the preaching work and so forth. And so they began to realize that rather than just one person being a president or a lot of the decisions coming on that person, that a governing body was the model that the Bible was actually setting forth, and they made that adjustment.
Okay, well, thank you for that. But my question was, who was the original faithful slave in the organization? I was just curious about that.
I don't know if there was a faithful slave.
Yeah, they did talk
particularly.
about it, I think. They did use that. Um,
Okay.
so you're not sure who it was?
There wouldn't have been just one single person. The slave in that verse. Let me look here quick.
Was it ever Charles Russell?
No, he's of.
Are you sure?
He's the one that. What's that?
Are you sure that it was never said that he was the faithful slave?
No, he was not. It wasn't. There would never have been just one person who would have been highlighted as being more important than anybody else. Even the faithful and discreet slave today, they don't get put in any kind of special position of importance, as far as they have a big responsibility, but they're not elevated above anybody else. They still require the same requirements that we all have. We have to be faithful. We have to be loyal. We have to be diligent. All those things apply to them as well. So it would never elevate one person above everyone else. That's why we make sure that we follow Jesus, and the faithful and discreet slave. So that word discreet is really indicating that they would have to watch their own actions to make sure that they didn't elevate themselves above anyone else. I'm sorry, that answer.
Okay, well, my question was, who was the original faithful slave? And yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've read a few of the original books called Studies in the Scriptures, and they did use that expression a lot. And I'm pretty sure it was Charles Russell, but maybe you could check that out. The origins of things are so important. When did Christ choose them? I mean, or him, or whoever it was. When did Jesus choose them? How did they know? I'm just curious. When you read about Joseph Smith, he supposedly had a vision, that gave him this authority or this special calling. We know that the early leaders didn't have any validating miracles and signs and wonders like are called the signs of an apostle. So, did Jesus, like, was it a vision, or did they themselves just decide they were the slave? Or, I mean, how did that come about?
So we know that the visions and the special the things that happened in the first century, where there was healings and visions and all that, it was prophesied that those were going to be done away with. And so we know that none of the governing body, they did not get appointed through like a miraculous means.
Yeah, to say that you're God's only channel on earth, it would seem to me it would require something like that. That's why those things happened. Moses had signs and wonders. Jesus had signs and wonders. Paul did. The disciple, the apostles. Um, so how did they know they were the slave? I mean, an outsider could look at this stuff and say they're just saying that, right? Like, I would say the same thing about Joseph Smith. He claimed a similar type authority, that everybody else was wrong. He started with that premise to try to get people to accept that there wasn't any true Christians for all the great apostasy, and although he said a lot of similar things, How do you know it's not him? I mean, he said he was kind of the restorer of the true church. So, um, you know,
Yeah.
I guess anybody could read this
That's
and say that, right? I mean, uh, it's a huge claim.
that, yeah. No, I totally agree. That's a very good point, and that's why we're all encouraged when it comes to Bible truth. We're encouraged to look into them for ourselves rather than be told simply that. And so, for me personally, when I made myself do an investigation. So if what the faithful and discreet slave is teaching, if it doesn't line up with what I can see for myself in the Bible, I mean that would just be a no-brainer. And I mean something with Joseph Smith. I mean he made a claim that only he received it, only he saw it, and now you have to listen to him. And so everything that the governing body teaches today, and any kind of direction that we receive, it is always based on scriptures that each and every one of us can look at. There's no mystery. There's no, you could say, hiding behind, well, we just know this and you have to follow. It's what are the scriptures saying and how are they basing it on it.
Could,
So I think that's
could I ask you?
our,
I'd like to ask you a little bit of a question about that. They have actually made statements that you can't understand the Bible without the organization, without the channel of communication. So how would somebody be able to test it? Because they're just saying you see, it's a circular kind of reasoning. You're claiming that you could test them by the Bible. For example, let me read you this. It says, "To this organization alone, God's sacred word, the Bible, is not a sealed book. A Christian needs Jehovah's Theocratic Organization in order to understand the Bible. Unless we are in touch with this channel God is using, we will not progress along the road to life, no matter how much Bible reading we do." Now, those are all quotes that they have said. So, how could somebody test it? You couldn't, because they say you can't. It's a circular kind of thing. You're claiming that you could do that, but they're saying you have to accept them first.
well, I guess the thing to keep in mind with it is that everyone makes their own decision on it.
Oh yeah, it
And
wasn't.
it's hard
That's a
when,
different topic. That's a different topic. I didn't claim that you didn't make your own decision, but what I'm just challenging you a little bit about that. That you could test them by the Bible, because the witnesses. If the organization says the faithful slave is the anointed and the governing body, and they taught that for years and said it was based on the Bible, and then they one day in 2012 change it to say it's just the governing body, and they say that's based on the Bible, then you all will change your mind occasionally, immediately. And yesterday you believed it was the anointed and the governing body. So, where is your source of authority? Is it really the Bible, or is it their ever changing interpretations, right?
what do you mean by 2012 and the governing body? And
Oh,
I'm
it
not sure
used
I
to,
understand
well,
what you
the
mean by.
previous definition, they've had about, I think, 6 different definitions of who is the slave. And for a long time before, it was defined as the anointed class and the governing body. And then I think it was 2012, they changed it to just the governing body.
No, there's the anointed, which the anointed consists of, as you likely know, the 144,000. So that those are those who have the heavenly hope. The governing body are made up of anointed men, but there's never been any confusion as to the anointed and the governing body. The governing body is of anointed men, but the anointed consists of men and women throughout the whole the whole earth
Yes,
that
and
were
they were
not.
all the anointed were taught from the publications to be the faithful and discreet slave, including the governing body, until
No,
2012.
that was never taught because there was never confusion as who the anointed were. The slave was always, I mean, in the faithful or in the first century with the apostles, it was 12 men. So there was never any, and then all the congregations at that time were made up of the anointed. So there was never a confusion as to the anointed.
When you're saying, are you trying to say the anointed were not ever taught to be part of the faithful and discreet slave?
Absolutely not, no, because they would that would make up that would be 144,000 people making up the governing body, and it was always a small group that, like when Jesus instituted that first arrangement in the first century, it was a small group of men that were dispensing the direction, the spiritual food to the many. So
Yeah,
I think
they used that when they
other
changed it.
information from the internet, and that also
No, I'm getting it from
adds.
the publications. Would you like me to send you the references on that so you can have accurate knowledge about the history? Because you keep saying they
No,
never taught that, and they most certainly did. Maybe you're kind of young and you weren't like, noticing that they taught that. It was a major change to being just the governing body.
no, I'm sorry. That's never been taught.
Could I send you the reference then? They're purely only from the Watchtower and the publications. It's just a good thing for you to know in case somebody asks you about it.
No, that's okay. I I I'm looking at articles right now. This is from 1990, and there has never been that claim. So
Okay, well,
um,
it's just if I send you just Watchtower quotes, you're not interested in that. Are you leery of their teachings? I mean, what's the problem? They said it was all from Jehovah at that time. Um,
uh,
I
not
find that really strange. You guys tell everybody to read the website and the Watchtower, and you won't even look at them. I won't even make any commentary about it. But you're certainly very wrong that they never said the slave was the anointed class and the governing body.
I'm sorry. I don't know exactly where you're pulling that from, but if
I
you
am
would like,
offering I'm
maybe we could
offering to
have.
show you.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was just reading. I'm trying to. So it says, okay. So here is. I mean, this is a publication that we've had since. Uh, so this is. We've had this for at least 15 years. So, giving the description who is the faithful and discreet slave? So it says, it is a small group of anointed followers of Jesus. The slave is closely identified with the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. It dispenses timely spiritual food to fellow worshippers of Jehovah. We are dependent on this faithful slave to keep giving us our measure of food supplies at the proper time. So that's just a very simple definition of who the slave is, and that's been pretty clear for some time now. So definitely nothing changed in 2012.
It was a huge
But if you,
change in
I
that
mean, if you have
article.
more questions, what's that?
It was a huge change, and I can give you the quotations. The slave included all anointed witnesses, but they started kind of talking about the governing body more, but still technically they didn't change it till 2012. They started pointing to it. Well, I was just telling you that at some point they started
Oh,
mentioning governing body, governing body. So then people wouldn't be as startled by it, but was certainly defined as the anointed class and the governing body. So they've changed that, over the years. They used to say it was Russell for a time as well, early on.
well,
See, like for example, well, this is from the 2013. But I have to look. I don't have them all memorized or anything like that, but um, they were the anointed class and the governing body, and they considered the governing body kind of a spokesman for them as they started using that term more, the governing body, that they kind of represented them, but they were still considered the slave.
so I think I have a. So is this your personal phone number?
Yeah, uh-huh.
I can text you a video that was from.
Oh, great. And if you text me that, I promise I will look at it, and I'll send you the references on who is the slave. Okay? I'm not afraid to look at your
So
video.
I don't. Yeah, I don't see your number now.
Do you don't see it?
No,
You
it's
just
on my
said you did.
Are you from Milltown
No,
area,
no,
or you said that from Phoenix?
no, no. I don't live in Phoenix either. I don't know why my phone says Phoenix,
Oh,
but it's not important. But anyways, yeah. Can you text me the video, and then I'll text you back those references. Maybe you can check them out.
well. So if you're honestly looking for answers, I'd be happy to help. But yeah, if it's just if you're, I mean, I'm kind of getting the sense that it's more about trying to debate and stuff, and I'm not gonna spend time with that. But if you want,
Didn't they
I
just
mean,
have
you're
that
welcome to go on to
convention
the
about
website.
defending your faith? Put up a hard fight for the
What's that?
faith. I watched part of the convention, and they talked about they had these talks about put up a hard fight for the faith. What does that mean to you? That everybody should just accept what you say, or else you start questioning their motives? Do you think that's putting up a hard fight for the faith? I mean, this is the core doctrine of the Watchtower, is that they speak for Jehovah. They say it all the time. They're God's
I'm
only
not
channel
trying
of
to
truth on
accuse your
earth.
motives, ma'am. I'm not. I'm just saying that it's just coming from the conversation. It seems you're more looking to debate something. And
So who do you talk to? Just
if you
people that
talk,
accept everything the Watchtower says? I mean, what does it mean to you to put up a hard fight for the faith? The Bible does teach to defend the faith.
absolutely, but it
Hmm.
also talks about not getting into debates with people that just want to debate something, and that's not something that we're looking to do.
Have you ever read Paul's discourses with philosophers and atheists and idolaters?
Yeah, he
Okay.
was able he was able to talk to people that wanted to sincerely
No, they
talk about
didn't.
it,
No,
but
they didn't. They just wanted to hear something new, it says. They didn't accept him.
yeah.
No, he reasoned with them. Anyway, well, I know you're taught not to. I think they don't want you to hear these questions.
Well, I appreciate your concern,
Okay.
but
Well, text me if you
yeah,
ever want to. You have my number. And
okay.
hey, I
Well,
appreciate your
have a good
your
day.
patience and kindness. Okay.
What's that?
I appreciate your patience and kindness. I enjoy talking to
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I did too. Have a good day.
Okay. God
Okay.
bless you. See ya.